hang on a second. I already got a
You're
problem
live.
here. Am I coming across? So everybody, hi, this is John Haller with our Prophecy Roundtable, and of course it's about a technology, and we have a technology issue right away off of the bat. So it looks like my Facebook post got deleted somehow. But anyway, welcome to tonight's roundtable. Somebody just give a thumbs up, or yeah, you can hear us in the chat. I'm with my good friends tonight, Scott Townsend, Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, and Pete Garcia. And tonight we're gonna do a little bit of an update on some of the things and a discussion about some of the things going on in the AI space because I personally find it very confusing and very helpful and very troubling all at the same time. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And so let's start. I'm going to go to Scott Townsend first. And Scott, about it, it's funny because things happen so quickly these days. It was what was it, 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, that this Molt book, Claude, Open Claude, whatever it's called, came out, and it really hit the my X feed and other social media feeds like a firestorm. Maybe you can explain a little bit about what happened, and was it something that we should be concerned about? Was it a game changer and that sort of thing?
So, good evening, everybody. Yeah, let's talk about those developments right now. And basically, I've seen all the videos on it, and I have someone that I follow every video that he does, and he just implemented it too. So I wanted to see how he was approaching it and what he was talking about. And then today, I'm watching a video sponsored by or from the IBM team. This is International Business Machines. This is the big company here, and all of their security experts talking about it. But at the top level, what happened is a solo entrepreneur that actually had an exit a number of years ago, and he had funding, and he was bored. So as he was re-engaging with what do I do with my life now, he decided to get into exploring AI and its potential. Well, as a developer, he had the ability and the funding and the foresight to begin working on basically an agentic system. Now, for our audience that has heard the term agentic, what that is basically meaning is that you can, instead of interacting with AI like a chat GPT, let's say one-on-one, and you ask a prompt and it returns, and there's this bit back and forth one-on-one bound conversation here. Agentic frameworks allow you to have a one issued command, and what it will do is it will go to what's called an orchestrator, and that orchestrator has the ability to work with other agents. So you can already see kind of a multiplication principle here. And in a technical field like software, you would have the orchestrator saying, oh, we need to create a new app. So I'm going to have the architect app or the agent, define the architecture that we need. And I'll have a front end engineer designing the user interface. And I'll have, so on and so forth. There's a number of different technical skills that would normally be involved, and they're allocated by the orchestrator to specialist AIs. Okay. And what is unique is that we're getting to the point where the delegated AIs, the agents, are actually not only receiving, the command of what the goal is from the orchestrator, but then have the ability to interact between themselves. And that allows them to do critical analysis, like one agent would say, who's maybe involved in quality assurance or deployment or something like that. And then they could say, hey, you're doing this, but I found a bug over here. You need to fix that. And it goes back to the developer agent. And they're just coordinating like this. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that you've got a high degree of autonomy going on with extreme skill now, because the underlying large language models right now, especially I'm thinking right at the top of my head, Opus 4.6, you've got, ChatGPT 5.3, Codex, which is a coding specific, LLM. It's their state of the art system, of course. Google has their version of it. And I think this guy created a framework that was brilliantly executed, except when it wasn't. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But people started to see what he was doing, basically setting up, let's say, a Mac Mini, which is very inexpensive, and he configured the software. It's all in open source. And then you can command it to do things. Go retrieve my email. Go analyze what's going on. Go look at the news. Tell me what's important. Go post my thing. Go find 5 tweets for me today. And then it would all schedule and automate it. So it's an automation orchestration system. And I think that, the security, what happened nearly immediately after this guy released his software, it's open source, and people started to adopt it. Here's the scary part. There were many security vulnerabilities in it, and including the most spectacular one I heard of is that somebody used it to create a fake or a semi-real crypto, which is very common, that there's crypto fraud going on. And a bunch of people bought the coin. It was something like OpenClaw coin or something catchy, And all of a sudden they had $26 million worth of funding in that token. And they did what's called a rug pull. They just walked away with $26 million. And that happened in like 2 days. So it is very, very serious. People are getting their, computers compromised. You don't really know what's going on inside of one of these agents. And despite everyone's best intentions, this guy who created this has a bunch of people helping him trying to fix all the security vulnerabilities. And now there's a wave of best practices on how to really do it correctly. And so just in 2 weeks, John, this is maturing to the point where people aren't stopping the adoption. They're just getting better at setting it up and making sure that it doesn't do something stupid that wrecks their life. Because if you give the agent digital permissions, just imagine it can post on Facebook for you and you have no idea what it's really doing at that point. So it's quite the phenomenon right now, and it's a little loose, very loose. It's very dangerous. The IBM guys are security experts. They're saying this is really very dangerous, and no company like enterprise company should ever have one of their employees using this because it could exfil a bunch of corporate secrets, right? It would just completely devastate a company. It's too risky, too immature right now.
So that the AI agents don't have to sign non-disclosure agreements is what you're telling me.
That's correct. There are rules, okay, but everyone knows how those rules are, right? We constantly see with AI companions and other what I would call close conversations over a long enough period of time with an AI that you actually can see the distortions and the mistakes and the dangerous things that occur there. So as a tool, it's great, but you have to be very, very cautious when giving the digital keys to an agent in order to have it do work on your behalf, such as giving it access to Outlook or Gmail so that it can do stuff for you, right?
So, I mean, when people are using this to set things up, and I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't done it because I'm kind of afraid.
Yes, you should be afraid.
I think it seems like a big trap. When people in the industry are having trouble with it, what chance do I have? But who was behind Claude or OpenClaw or whatever, Moltbook? What company was behind that?
So it's just a guy.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, just one guy. and he
Okay.
created it, and it runs. So OpenClaw is not the same thing as an LLM. It is an orchestrator, and you give it API keys so that the agent can talk to the large language model. So Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, and other models. You can even use a private model running on your local desktop or your Mac. It could do that too. So, but here's the main reason why this went so viral. There has been this talk about bringing automated tools like this for years, from Google, from Apple, think Apple Siri and all their nonsense. And you've got the promise of it, the promise of it, the promise of it. And they've never really implemented it. And the argument that has been made, correct argument, is that it is extremely difficult to put boundaries around what's actually happening with the AI. And therefore, the big companies that have real shareholders and real liability exposure can't just let it out like that without having the right guardrails and safety protocols and protection for security. So that's why they delay. They delay all the time. Well, what happened is, when this guy released it open source, people could download it and they could have it right away. So this guy enabled, or let's just say exploited, this idea that people wanted to be more in control. They wanted to break away from the tech oligarchs, if you will, the big companies, and begin to take advantage of AI and its productivity gains for their own reasons and their own purpose. And OpenClaw actually gives them the ability to do that. And you can get it set up in a couple hours.
So I think I'm going to shift a little bit to a little bit different topic, but I think it's kind of related. So you're saying don't mess around with this.
Correct. Don't. I do not recommend it at all, period. It's very risky.
Okay. And if anybody else has something to the contrary, chime in. But then on the other hand, Scott, go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I have to add, Elon Musk and other leaders in the AI space have declared that this is the beginning of the singularity. That's to me, that's probably premature, but nevertheless, they're saying it openly. And maybe it's just
so remind us what the singularity is supposed to be.
That's supposed to be the point where technology takes off on its own to do stuff outside of human control, which this Molt book does actually, or the OpenClaw. And they say they're saying this is the interaction of AI to do other things that nobody anticipated in the first place. And they have other reasons, I'm sure, for saying that I'm not privy to, but nevertheless, they're saying openly that the singularity is upon us. And I think Ray Kurzweil was the first guy that talked about the singularity several years ago. I think his latest estimate is like 2045 or something like that, when this will occur. But Elon Musk himself is jumping the gun, I think.
Okay, maybe they are. So I'm having trouble with my. So somebody else talk. I'm having trouble with my audio there for a second.
Yeah. So part of the confusion is there's also different definitions being used. So I believe Ray Kurzweil's definition of the singularity is a point in time at which the unaugmented human mind can't comprehend the technological change that's happening. So it's just so rapid that we can't keep up with it. Whereas the one Elon Musk is using is this point where AI surpasses human intelligence, which is really very subjective, in my opinion. I don't think this is that. And I want to clarify one point. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott, but especially with Molt book, the media is putting out this idea that people woke up one day and it turns out that Maltbook was created by all these AI agents and they just started interacting with each other and talking about destroying humans, when in reality, it was established by a human who prompted this to happen. And all of the AI agents that partook in Maltbook had to be enabled to do so by the humans that were running them. They had to download it. They had to tell it to go to Maltbook and start doing this. So to me, this is really no different than a lot of things that we've seen already with AI interacting in the comments on social media. We saw last year, there was a video where a man had said, it told his AI to go book a hotel room for him. And the AI called this hotline, and then it gets another AI, and then they start speaking in their encoded language. So we've already seen this before. To me, the danger here that this really overlooks is not that AI is going to be turned loose on the population or turn against humanity. And I think, Scott, you wrote a great piece about this on your Substack, part 2 of Maltbook, where you talked about the prompts that are behind this. And in this, you used an example of an issue at a local church, and there were 2 people that held differing opinions. And the AI prompt knew what their opinions were, knew what to say to them. It said different things to each individual. And so Maltbook, from my standpoint, is really a glimpse into the future of a laboratory that has all of this information on how humans interact with each other on social media. It can run millions and millions of simulations of how those humans would interact and figure out what are the touch points that I need to nudge someone, knowing their personal profile, to get them to do or believe what I want them to do or believe. And so, again, the real concern here should be human beings using these tools, using AI, to influence society and consolidate power over the rest of society and other human beings. And I think that's what Maltbook shows. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thank you for the compliment, Britt. I could have written about the technical parts of Maltbook, but I felt impressed to begin revealing how this works. And so using a platform, the platform tools as a developer, I was able to set up what is called a system prompt that sits above the user conversations. And by doing that, I could steer the attitude of the response from the AI. I could steer its bias, its things like that. And I did this a very, very simple example because I'm seeing just a lot of fear. And I would say most of the people that interact on my Substack and elsewhere that I look, they're very fearful of AI, and they should be. I mean, there's some definite danger things in there, but I think that they have this thing like AI is really intelligent. You know, we in this roundtable put a stake in the ground. Patrick, I will be ever thankful for you, brother. You were the one that when you said AI is not intelligent, bang, the Holy Spirit said, Scott, pay attention. You know, it just was instantaneous when you said that. And ever since then, I've been working to undo I would say the narrative that AI is intelligent and that it's capable of doing things like this on its own. It really isn't. It's a bunch of humans behind some, company, institution, government, whatever, criminal organizations trying to scam people, trying to bait them. The tools and the information that they have is so much better right now. And when you get a phishing attack or something like that, where people are trying to lure you into clicking links and things, by the way, best practice, never, ever, ever click a link that comes to you on your phone or your tablet. What you do is you see that text coming in, could be from a bank or some other thing. Then you don't respond to it there. You go into your computer and log in like you would normally do it, okay? Don't click those convenience links that you get. That's dangerous to do that today in today's world. So I think that I wanted to show that I'm pulling the curtain back. Here's me just in a matter of half an hour setting up this set of conditions for basically the system prompt to control based on my input, what is going on in the conversation between this fictitious user and the AI that they're talking to. And I think I'll do more of this, guys, because I think it's very helpful for people to see this and they're going, oh my goodness, it's that easy to do this. And then all of a sudden this mystique, this fog of war, this fear of what's going on, it's going to move the narrative away from AI being intelligent and to evil people perpetrating evil things for evil intent. That's where I think this is going to steer. And I just feel like I haven't done enough taking personal responsibility to help the body of Christ understand what I know to be true about it. I've been working with AI for 3 years now. So it lit a fire under me when I saw the nonsense going on with Moltbook, especially.
So I get these ads all the time. Become an AI expert in 28 days, 15 minutes a day, and you'll be a certified AI expert to learn how to use these different apps. Should I do that?
No.
Do it.
So the truth here is one of the biggest business models you can do to try to make money is to offer courses, having secret information that only you have, that only you can train people on. That's nonsense. Today, you would directly use an LLM and then posit your question or your project or whatever it is you're doing directly into a large language model. And if it's a business context, or legal situation, you'll use one of the big state-of-the-art models, especially OpenAI and Claude are, one of their core competencies is law.
But how good are they at law? I don't care anymore.
They are far better.
Retired.
They're far better than most attorneys today.
In what sense would you say that, Scott?
Well, they know the background and the training that they've been given, all the manuals, all the cases, all that stuff, and you can ask it virtually anything, and it would put an intelligent, yet let's remember that it could be hallucinating cases and dates and things like that, people, and that's been proven. And I guess that in different legal briefs, there is something like, I heard as many as 30 or 60% of the things that judges look at they know immediately this was written by an AI. And it's really frustrating, the judiciary system right now, because it's just, you can have a legal brief in 5 minutes, and it's just the velocity of this type of stuff is getting out of hand, I think.
Well, so back when I was practicing, they would say 30 to 60% was not AI, but 30 to 60% of it was written by an idiot.
Well,
that's really bad reasoning, and you're misciting the case. And
the AIs are very competent. It doesn't mean that you can issue, print, and then mail it. You can't do that. You've got to have the legal background in order to vet that the position that the AI is saying hasn't been corrupted by some hallucination that it has. So just for our audience, a hallucination is when, in the process of an AI wanting to be a helpful assistant, it starts inventing stuff to tell you, and it presents it as though it is fact, cold hard fact. But in fact, it is not. It's just made it up because it doesn't know the answer, and it's trying to help you. So it made it up in order to make it look like it's helping you. Very unbelievable when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to make a great comedy routine out of this at some point.
Type the scene into an AI and it'll write it for you.
Yes, indeed.
And if you make
Wow.
millions, think about your poor relatives, John.
Yeah, so I'll just share this. So back during the health issue that we had a few years ago, to get around the censors on YouTube, if I wanted to talk about the virus, I started calling it Charlie Vector 019er. And so somebody saw that on a program recently and said, "Hey, somebody used that term on your program." And so I went to, I think it was Gemini on Google, and said, "Hey, when did John?" I didn't act like it was me, you know. I said, "When did John Haller start using the term Charlie Vector 019er?" And they said, "Well, that's kind of a not perfect use of sort of a military technical term." And then somebody also wrote me an email, my own personally, I guess, and said, "No, it really should be Charlie Victor." And I said, "But John is known for using Hallerisms like this when he talks about things in geopolitics." So I told the person that that's my Hallerism. You know, I get to choose my own Hallerism. You can't judge me for that. But, and it said, it picked up when I started using it. And then I only asked him when, but then it said he used it so he could get around the censors on YouTube. And it's sort of like I didn't ask that question, but they gave me that answer. So I don't know. It's kind of freaky. And then it came up with some others. And then somebody said they, from a large language model that they converse with, said, "Yeah, looking forward to the Prophecy Roundtable on February 11th, and we'll be watching."
One note, by the way, because they will be. But remember, Google's on this, YouTube, and they do the translation and transcription right away. It goes right in to a training. But think about this, guys. Recently, I think, Britt, wasn't it just 2 weeks ago that Microsoft took a $400 billion hit on their valuation because they were being, they're losing ground on customer user sentiment. People are so sick and tired of Copilot and all the prompts everywhere. You have to constantly be pestered by these things, and people are sick of it. And I guess their share price have declined significantly, and it may have rebounded by now. I don't know, but Britt, isn't that just so predictable? You know, I think Microsoft may be kind of waking up to the damage that they're doing to their brand, because people are moving away to Macs and to Linux. And they're abandoning Microsoft, and corporations like the enterprise customer is so fed up with this intrusion. I call it AI intrusion. And who knows what's happening inside of an Excel spreadsheet with company sensitive financial data. You have no idea what's going on, and corporations are really hesitating here at this point. So Microsoft is going, I predict, will be doing a pivot. Yeah, but the problem is they want the data. They're going to get it somehow. So
I did when I first got. So I use Office 365 on a Mac, and I like PowerPoint. I'm a PowerPoint guy, and I still long for the good old days of WordPerfect because I thought it was a superior product. It really was.
It was a superior product.
But when the Copilot came, it took me about, it was less than 15 minutes before I drilled down to figure out how to shut it off everywhere. And it reminded me, do you remember Clippy that they came out with in one of the early versions of Word? That stupid little paperclip thing that would follow you around. Is this just an updated version of that?
Seems like
basically, yeah.
I hated that thing.
Oh yeah.
Pete's not old enough to remember any of this.
Yeah, you guys are so old. I'm the young man here. I'll take it.
Okay, so let's go from there, and we will get the questions here in a minute. But I get to ask questions first because it's my YouTube channel, at least one of them. But what's the? I guess I see a lot of different messages coming at us that it's not that good, it doesn't help that much, it's not really replacing humans, it's replacing humans, it's not that bad. And then today I see memos from guys like the head of safety or whatever he is at Anthropic, which always held itself out as we're going to be the safe AI company. And he puts out a memo today, at least I think it was him, that he's resigning because it's not safe and we are in a world of peril and everything is converging into almost a doom cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that too.
Let's start with Pete. What do you think of that? I mean,
I think if we go back to the 90s, we were kind of in the same boat with the introduction of the internet. A lot of places you went to had it. A lot of places didn't have it. So it was kind of a mixed bag. Like, how big is this thing really going to get? And before you know it, I mean, it was 97 before I was in Germany for a few years in the Army. And then I was, just out and about. And so the first time I even had an email address was in 97. And I didn't know anything about computers at that point. And most of the Army units I'd been in up until that point didn't even have computers in the office. We had one computer in the motor pool that was like the DOS, black screen with the green, and it wasn't connected to anything. It was just stuff to put data into. But next thing you know, it's everywhere, and you can't even exist without it. I think we're in that same kind of window right now where the world is transitioning to it. And I think once the corporate world, which they have already, and the government is leaning into chat and all the different AI platforms. I think it's going to be pretty profound in terms of what it's going to do to the economy, what it's going to do for jobs. I think any job out there that it deals with data input or program analysis or anything that revolves a computer, I think AI is going to be able to replace that in the next few years. And companies are going to opt to buy a AI package, corporate package, whatever, over hiring 20 people, that they have to now deal with, unions, or they got to deal with health issues or payouts, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be that transformative in the same way that the internet was. But we're like in the early 90s. So we're kind of in that mixed window where some people have it, some people like it, some people use it. There's mixed messaging all over the place. So I'd liken it to that. But I do think it's going to be very impactful in a negative way.
anybody else? If you're not going to answer, I'll go get AI to answer.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree entirely. I mean, you look back, we're almost there's so many parallels between the rise in AI stocks that we see today and the dot-com bubble back in the late 1990s, and you had all these promises that were being made at that time that turned out to be true, but in many cases, 10 years later, 15 years later.
Yeah,
I think a lot of what we're seeing, people have been hearing these promises for 2-3 years of all these things that AI is going to do. And again, AI is not intelligent. It's not sentient. It's a very sophisticated algorithm. It will transform the world. But it doesn't happen as people expect. As soon as the story comes out, it's going to happen next week. And it takes time for these things to roll out, to be adopted, for bugs to work out. But we are seeing exponential change. And when you see exponential change, at first it appears that not much is happening. And then all of a sudden it really happens. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see here. We're probably, a lot of people will call it the AI bust, as there's been an overbuild, a lot of capital expenditures that will not pay off for these companies. But they're laying the groundwork for the companies that will succeed in this space. And we're seeing this change a number of different realms, especially in the military world, which we could probably talk about later.
And it's financially taxing. I mean, one of the big reasons for that drop in Microsoft was that people are beginning to realize just how tied they are still to OpenAI. And OpenAI has $20 billion of revenue, but has pledged $1.3 trillion worth of future business contracts with data centers and electricity and everything. And they're not alone. I mean, there's just a terrible amount of realism that's now being injected into this. Will it scale? They can't get power to some of these data centers, and it's a growing problem. And I'm one of those people, not financial advice, but I feel like there is a AI bubble coming. I definitely think there will be, because no one can do that. I mean, you just can't keep growing infinitely, without a major correction. And I think that is coming.
That's why Elon Musk is pushing so hard to get his satellites converted to solar panels,
Yes.
to feed that endless energy. That's the big
Put 'em in
constraint
space.
is AI has as a constraint is energy. And once they get that figured out, I mean, they're going to have all the energy they can possibly need. I don't think they're going to be bound by anything at that point, in terms of at least energy restraints.
Yeah. Did you hear, Pete, that Elon, I think he said that the satellites up there could operate on just 1/100000th of 1% of the sun's energy, and it would be more energy that they would ever need.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, he said that
just the numbers are just unbelievable.
he said what we are able on Earth to harness about 1/100000th of the power of the sun. I think that's what I heard him say.
Okay. That could
And
be.
they put them up there, and it's unlimited because there's no atmosphere, and
There is a constraint, however, on how many solar panels you can deploy in space, and it's not infinite, for sure. They'll be wrecked by space debris,
Yeah.
fragments of
It's a
rock.
numbers game.
Yeah, so there's lots of problems just spreading these huge arrays in space to harvest energy. Maybe it can be done, but there's no mechanism at this point, if they get damaged, to fix them. That's a big problem for sure. So there's a little bit of hype going on here about the space race. Will it happen someday? Probably so, but I see major problems offsetting the hype, if you will.
Yeah, I think even right now, Patrick, to your point, I think that if you go to the satellite, real-time satellite orbits of Starlink, space.starlink.com or whatever the URL is, you could look it up. But I think they already have about 10% of their satellites that have been decommissioned.
Yes.
Already.
This is a big problem. Space junk is a big problem right now. Big
They're
time.
not junk yet. They're just floating dead pieces of silicon and metal and stuff.
I think they only have those satellites only have a shelf life of 5 years or 10 years. They're not very long. And he's got over 9,000 up there right now. I think he's aiming for 1 million. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen right away, but he's going to have the only game in town. I mean, everybody else is going to be having to come to him if he's able to harness this power of the sun like he claims he can. Then everybody will have to go through him to get that energy. So Amazon, Google, the rest of these guys are years behind him in terms of even having that capacity, which was why a lot of these data centers are looking at doing these little modular nuclear facilities or nuclear reactors to power their data centers.
Yeah, somebody emailed said, why don't we use nuclear power like we use on ships? And I said, because it's hard to get the ships into the middle of Indiana cornfields.
Good answer.
There is a project I just saw recently where they're just doing exactly that. Not the whole ship, but taking the nuclear power plant out of a ship and putting on site. Maybe there's, maybe they could do that. It seems to me that ships have been running, oh gosh, on nuclear for how many years? I'm thinking back 50 years at least.
It's got to be back in the 50s, I
Yeah.
would think.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of dating all of us. Like, we remember when that was new technology.
You guys were all in your 30s at the time in the 50s, right?
That's right. I remember when in the law business, when the internet kind of took off from some of us who were early adopters, there was a thing called Council Connect. And it was essentially a bulletin board with topics. But where it really took off was the daily discussion of the O.J. Simpson trial. That's when everybody that's when the numbers really shot up. And then I don't know, you could find things on the internet. It was kind of like being in the Wild West, I guess, at the time. But anyway, so we have this thing like, so Scott, so what you're saying is, if the big companies are putting in guardrails, we need to put up personal guardrails too.
But the problem is normal people don't have those skills, John. That's why, it's very important to stay away from that stuff. It's way too early.
But what if you're in business and your employer's pushing you to adopt something? Or are they not going to do it because they don't want to risk?
There's always risk reward in business, and that's a different value proposition, right? I think that they have IT teams or they have consultants that they can hire to help them put the right things in place. But you as an individual don't have that team that you can help you, do something like that. I think my advice is to stay away from it. At least for the foreseeable future. It's not ready.
When you say stay away from the agent part?
Well, the whole thing is, so OpenClaw is an orchestration of other agents that it spawns. So you don't want to download OpenClaw and get it up and running. And there'll be competitors swarming to come into this because it's the ultimate spyware. This is Microsoft recall for Windows without all the corporate controls in it. So you're giving the local orchestrator, the AI process there, the ability to do anything on your file system. It can move files. It can remind you where they were. It can, go do research for you, run reports. It can, do look at your bank, thing and suggest ways to spend money or save it. And so it's just, it's too loose, very dangerous to adopt it right now. You're giving too much power. Mm-hmm. And what most people don't understand, John, this is important to say, and I'll shut up here, but people don't understand, let's talk Windows, which still has 70% of the world market share on desktops. Underneath what you see in the Windows and the desktop is basically APIs and instrumentation that runs on services. If you right click, go to Task Manager, and then look at the Services tab, you'll see hundreds of things running that you yourself have not done. It's the operating system that is running that. And so think about the control and the vetting and the all the safety things that are done in a build in order to make sure that it's safe to deploy to hundreds of millions of users everywhere on the next Windows update. So just a word on Windows 10, because I have a desktop with Windows 10. It wasn't eligible to upgrade to Windows 11, and I wouldn't upgrade it to Windows 11, nor am I buying another PC to run Windows 11. I bought a Mac and I have a Linux box, just to tell you where I'm going. But even it was hard to convert to a Mac. The thinking process is different. And Linux is for geeks. So unless you have a high tolerance for pain, expect to spend some time figuring out Linux. It's quite technical, more technical than Windows is, or the Mac even. But people are leaving the Windows, ecosystem, and that's why their stock dived like that.
Okay, so let me ask you the next question, because I sent around a post on X, I'll still call it a tweet, about a guy who said SASS apocalypse. And so SASS stands for Software as a Service. And he said, his stock options are all underwater. He may not be able to have his second or third vacation home because, bonuses are gone because, and I think this was kind of coming with this Claude bot or Claude stuff, was that what people used to spend hundreds of dollars an hour for as a service, now you can get it for $20 or something like that. Is that accurate assessment?
Don't associate the OpenClaw phenomenon with that.
Okay.
SaaS is here's where what they're saying and where I think that this is going. People are realizing how good OpenAI is or Claude is at programming. And so what's happening is they're able to write their own programs now. And if you could write your own program, you don't need to pay someone else for their program infinitely. Subscription every month, you get dinged on it. So that's what the revolution is. If you could spend 2 days writing a note-taking app with a journal in it, and you could have a beautiful app running on your desktop, why would you pay Evernote, which is, one of the more expensive mobile apps around? I think it's $100 a year or something like that. Why would you do that? So that's where the problem is. I think that people are taking more interest in doing exactly what they want. So bespoke solutions tailored exactly to their own, ideas of what they want. And AI will give it to them. It's very competent. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just sort of, I'll be honest with you, it's kind of jaw-dropping stuff. And I saw this coming a long time ago in the law practice, and because I was a tech geek,
So
and I hardly used an assistant.
let me give you.
But other guys had 2 assistants.
Yeah. Now you can have N number of assistants.
No, but the biggest cost, I used this when comp time came up, I would say, I only use 10% of a secretary. And they say, I don't care. I said, but our biggest cost are secretaries, and you have 2 of them because you won't read your own email, without printing it off. And it never persuaded them. But I thought it was a really good argument. But now I'm looking at what you can do potentially with this stuff, and it's like, why do you need young lawyers?
That's the problem. The entry level jobs are getting carved out, and the people that are in university right now have a major problem.
So what should they well, I heard Elon today, become a plumber or
Exactly. That's what you have to do.
a woodworker or something like that.
Bake bread, make crafts. Yeah. Be a mechanic, HVAC. I mean, there's trades those are never going to go out. I doubt they'll be replaced by robots anytime soon. And let's not forget that the rapture is supposed to be around the corner here. I'm not sure how far all this is going to go for us, at least. Just dropping that on the floor there for you guys.
Charging for every time somebody brings that up.
I'd like to just make the comment. Britt was talking about how the singularity is defined, and we're struggling right now. I just sense this between all of us. We're struggling trying to figure out what's going on here. What are the parameters? Where are the guardrails? Is it real? Is it not? Is it screwing people up? Is it not? Can it help people? Can it not? And this is almost the definition of the singularity in that sense. When we can't perceive what's real, that's basically what that's saying to us is, well, if we can't figure out what's real, where does that leave everybody else? This is a big problem. You might remember I talked several times along the way about my experience during my stroke, when I believe the Lord impressed on me that there would be a collapse of reality and at some point based on AI in particular. I think we're almost at that point right now. People cannot cope with the present because they can't cope with the past. And the trajectory of AI is going so fast at this point. It's growing still at a rate of about 4 to 4.5 times, 4.5 months. It's doubling every 4.5 months. In other words, we're talking. Our mind is anchored in 6 months ago, but here we are. Here we are 6 months later, and our mind can't catch up. What's going on? This is really crazy. I realize that, but
it's very true what you're saying, Patrick. And just anecdotally, from my point of view, as a software developer using AI coding assistants, the competency and speed, it's unbelievable. Just to give you an example, back when I was running a team, when I was a CTO, technical co-founder, all that stuff in a software startup, which was also a SaaS company, by the way, I would have, a team of people. We had 22 people spread throughout the world, and we would, work our butts off, and every week there was stuff to do. A unit of measure in a software company is typically called a sprint. A sprint is typically, 2 weeks, so 10 working days. We would have 30 hours of work that we would call an estimate for the things that had to be done in the sprint. And you typically couldn't even finish 30 hours of stories. So you would have this problem of, trying to get all this stuff coordinated with everybody. So just let me boil this down. Back in my past career, it would take, a sprint would take 10 business days, 10 work days. Today, by myself, I'm doing 2 sprints a day. And it's good. And it works.
yeah.
Very little issues. Very steerable when I see an issue that I have to correct. It takes it takes a lifetime of software development background in order to actually handle that kind of velocity, to be honest with you. This doesn't make me special. It just makes me scarred, battle scarred. So you just have an instinct about it as a software developer. And the thing is, you cannot actually comprehend the speed. So it's all you can do to hang on. And when a new model is, this is interesting also, when a new model comes out and they're coming out leapfrogging each other every month or so, but it's unreal. The incremental leaps of AGI, which they continue to purport, that's not true. It's just getting better they're fixing more things, making it more coherent. And so you can get an astonishing amount of stuff done. It still makes mistakes. You still have to be very careful with it, but it's amazing from a certain point of view.
I heard a story just recently, a compelling story, that there's a philosophy within the AI development community to put the bum's rush on software development in particular that seems to be sprinting ahead. I'll use that term, sprint. It appears to be moving ahead much more forcefully, rapidly than other disciplines. For instance, legal work, just as an example. And the idea is that the developers of AI are trying to force AI into better coding to the point where it can take over the coding of the AI itself.
That is already happening. So Sam Altman said of GPT 5.3 that LLM version number was actually written by AI. Now I'm sure there's a scale there somewhere. It's not the human in the loop is still there. Of course, all the training is important, but it's getting to the point where it's recursively improving itself now, and even OpenClaw can recursively improve itself too, because you can have an agent that does a quality control review, and if they see an opportunity to make an improvement to be more efficient, that will canonize in the instructions for the next project that you have to do. So it actually does get better. It doesn't make it intelligent, Patrick.
Yes,
it just makes it self-correcting in a very structured, logical, computer programming type of position, you know?
Yeah. So my logical question then is, will AI skill itself to the point where the next breakthrough will come from AI itself versus AI? In other words, not by human programmers figuring out some new technique, but what are the odds now that AI could make the breakthrough to the next level?
I think that's probably where the scientific research community is probably working very hard on that problem. And incidentally, just a heads up on this for our audience here, one of the superpowers that are being developed right now, talk about investment in making incremental improvements on AI, is to get it to run longer without human interaction. So the longer you can make it run without someone hitting the enter key or saying continue, the better off it is, because it'll work all night long without you. And so the research community is working on things like, how can we get protein folding, things going on while we're sleeping, and continue to make improvements. I think that stuff is well underway right now.
Yeah, we've already
it's
seen
already happening. It's not in the future.
We've already seen AI discover new materials that have never been discovered before. So we're seeing this, and I think there, as you said, Scott, there's a human in the loop that'll sort of nudge things. Okay, yeah, that's a pathway. Go pursue it more, and it just becomes recursive. And this is how we get exponential. I mean, we're already on exponential growth, but this is how we get to that vertical part of the curve and the exponential growth. And I think that's what Elon Musk is alluding to when he talks about we're in the beginning of the singularity. We're climbing that curve.
I feel like I should steer the conversation to something more positive, like global thermonuclear war or something.
I think the positive part, in my opinion, I'm interested in what you guys think about this, but every time I see this stuff, I'm just going, yep, because it's lining up exactly with the control system of Revelation 13. It's just confirmation. Things are so much clearer than they were even a year ago as to how is this going to work. And I think we have witnessed in our roundtables just the shocking amount of alignment that's happening between tech oligarchs and the elites and all this other stuff. It's just steering itself. And we've said before that Trump is the great accelerator to a lot of these ideas. He just cuts through all the red tape and bureaucracy in a way that makes a lot of this stuff possible, which, if you believe in selections, Hegelian dialectic, people aren't voted in, they're selected in. There's just undeniable intrigue when it comes to things like that, I think.
Well, I mean, just think about, like, we're sitting around talking about this spread out all over the country, with little cameras, and the audio is pretty good. And 3 years ago, this was really, really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was nerve wracking every time you hit go live. And yesterday I interviewed a wonderful lady, you might want to go look at it. It's kind of interesting with AI. She lives in Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood for almost 400, well, under 400 years, but over 300 years. And it was like she was like sitting right next to me. And if you go to Shiloh, to the Tabernacle Visitor Center, they have a hologram of the tabernacle, of the ancient tabernacle that was there 3,000 years ago. It's very strange. Let me go to a question. So I'm not going to edit it. This is what somebody said. Because this goes to quantum, and I think we were going to talk about quantum anyway. Is a quantum computer a connection to the spirit realm, like a Ouija board where Luciferians can connect?
Are they asking if that's...
Yeah,
quantum?
Is a quantum computer a connection to the spirit realm like a Ouija board?
Well, I'll jump on this grenade first. My understanding of quantum is very little, but from what I understand is, as far back as Einstein in the teens and the 20s of the 20th century believed that quantum theory was correct and that it was true and it was real. They just didn't have the means to access it then, right? So think about the progress we've made with computers just from the 1940s going forward. One computer took up a whole room, and the computing power is far less than what you have in your phone right now. Same thing with what they launched the Apollo missions with the computer systems that they had there in Houston and on the spacecraft were far weaker than the stuff we have in our own laptops now. And even still, all the platforms, all the technologies were moving in a direction of smaller and more powerful, more efficient. But we still didn't understand quantum. Like quantum was still this kind of science fiction-y kind of thing that was great for movies, but it was impractical in real life. And I think we're in that window right now where quantum is becoming a reality in terms of taking those large I don't know what they call it, the computing systems where you got to keep them in like absolute zero temperatures, the mainframes and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, they're going to scale that down and they're going to make quantum computing more practical, at least at the governmental level. And when they do that is going to open, like artificial intelligence, like we talked about earlier, we are limited by the amount of power that we can generate to house all these data centers and power all these systems that they want to do. I forget the gigawatts that it's going to take, but it's going to far exceed what the United States produces under current output. But quantum doesn't have that same kind of restraint on it. The only restraint it has right now is the temperature thing for its mainframes. So once they crack that code, I think quantum will go mainstream, and I think it's going to be an incredibly powerful tool. And I think it does kind of reach in between I don't want to say interdimensional, but I don't know how you get superposition without tapping into some type of non-corporal reality that we're in.
There's a very fascinating development happening out of Cisco. Cisco is the world leader in network switches, telephone equipment. You may have seen, phones that they do. They're a networking company, basically running half the world. And they are beginning to implement. So it's coming out of the lab and beginning to be used, where one network switch in San Francisco is entangled with a network switch in, let's say, Houston. No wire, no signal, no nothing. Alter the information on one side, and it instantaneously changes on the other at the speed of light, basically. Instantaneous transmission of data with no wires, no nothing. And just so, Pete, you're absolutely right. This is coming out of labs now into the real world. Cisco has almost like it's truly stunning that they can keep it stable and reliable and not lose fidelity, but they're gaining a lot of skill right now in terms of making quantum wells more stable. And AI, by the way, has a role in helping to maintain the integrity of a quantum, system like that. So it's amazing.
There's a comment in our chat here by this Mark. I don't know who Mark is. Don't have a clue. But he asked, I think quantum theory is flawed at some level, but I just can't put my finger on it, on how. I think it will be used to advance the lies and deception that lies ahead. What do you think?
Well, quantum doesn't have intelligence. It's a transport mechanism. So it has immense parallelism and processing power, but in and of itself, it is not, like the same thing as an AI. That's why the combination of AI and quantum is what I think the Antichrist will use, because the AI will have the intelligence and the prompts and the programming in order to assert different policies about the mark of the beast and what is permissible, what is not, how to make judgments on what to do, how to manage everyone's crypto wallets, et cetera, like that. But on the other hand, you've got quantum that will be able to crack passwords, and that's coming, probably already here. It's just that they haven't made it public. Everyone will freak out when SSL encryption breaks, and it's probably already broken. We just don't know it yet. So the people that said, hey, look, we're safe until there's at least 4,000 qubits. Well, remember that Microsoft just put 1 million qubits together, in their new system. It's like, I can't remember the name. It starts with an M, if I recall.
Is it Willow or no?
That would be Google's version.
Magenta? No.
It's close to that, yeah.
Margarita or something, yeah.
Margarita.
Is it Majora?
But
Majora.
Majora.
That's
that kind of
Britt.
gets into a philosophical issue too, as to what limits will God allow? When does God intervene?
This is why
And say
it's
enough is
very
enough.
accurate. Very
Armageddon.
accurate to say this is the Babylonian system rising right now. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was going to say Armageddon. The Bible tells us that. That's where God comes back and puts a stop to all of it.
Right, but there are people. So when people are going to be faced with this stuff, how do they know where the limits are, where they should not go beyond? So let's say we were writing a kit for somebody that's going to be facing this. What do we tell them?
Well, from a biblical worldview standpoint, you want to teach your children to operate from the Word of God. But again, the Tower of Babel story tells us this. It's when God stopped the building of the Tower of Babel, he explicitly said the reason for that was that they continued with this, everyone unified in the same language. Nothing will be impossible for them. And so to me, that's not just history from that time period, but it's also a prophecy of things to come. And so humans are going to pursue this technological advancement to the point that, quote, nothing will be impossible for them. I don't think there will be a limit until that limit hits up against God himself, and it leads to a physical manifestation of man's spiritual rebellion against the Lord and creator of the universe. And so we read in the book of Revelation, it says, the armies of the world gather together in Armageddon to do battle against the Lord and his anointed one. the one on the white horse, Jesus Christ. So it's not spiritualized away. They are trying to literally sit on the throne of God. This is Satan's desire. It is man's desire. Going back to the Garden of Eden, no, you will not die. You will be just like God. So this is the lie, the delusion, and we're seeing this. One of the things that concerns me the most is seeing some of this language that's coming out of Silicon Valley and from some of the world's elite leaders. And we saw it most recently in this story about rentahuman.ai. So there's a guy who created this. Basically, it's a part of the gig economy. AI will create these different jobs that need to be done, and human beings can sign up and figure out those jobs. I don't know how popular this site is, but notice the language that he uses. And if you go and read the story, the founder will talk, he calls it rentahuman.ai. He refers to human beings as rentable meatwads. And of course, I'm sure he doesn't see himself as a meatwad, but we're already seeing this language prevalent throughout the transhumanist community of we will evolve, we will merge with the technology, we will become super intelligent, and then everyone else who doesn't, you're going to be the useless eater class, as Yuval Noah Harari would point out. You're going to be beneath us. You're going to be a rentable meatwad. And so we're seeing the same type of dehumanizing language that we saw in Nazi Germany, where, well, these people are the superior race. These people don't deserve to live. They're weak. They need to be crushed. They're a drain on the state. And so we're seeing an enormous number of parallels between what the world AI is creating right now and is projected to create, and what we saw in the lead up to Nazi Germany and the rise of Adolf Hitler. I mean, even down to the projections of mass unemployment created by AI. What did we see in the lead up to Hitler's rise to power? We saw the Great Depression. 1 in 3 Germans was out of work. And many people identify with the work they do. That's their identity is wrapped up in their work. And when they lose that work, they lose a sense of meaning and purpose in life. That then Nazi ideology came in and gave them that meaning and purpose again. So we're really, the world is ripe in so many ways to see the rise of a dictator, a savior for the times. And the Bible is telling us where all of this is going to lead, and we're going there. That's where we're going for anybody that has their eyes wide open.
What I think for like how much of technology will we see? Well, there's, and correct me if I'm wrong or add on to it if I'm forgetting something, but there seems to be 4 mentions of technology, or at least it's implied in Revelation. You have Revelation 9:6, where you have people that want to die but can't die because of the torments of the demonic locust. You have Revelation 11, where the 2 witnesses, their bodies are viewed by everybody around the world, their bodies lying on the street. So we know that technology exists already. We have the mark of the beast technology, which is some type of biometric subdermal or on the skin, quantum dot tattoo, or whatever it's going to be, that technology. And then you have the image of the beast, which could be robotic, android, holographic. I mean, we don't know exactly what shape that's going to take just yet. So of the 4 things I mentioned, 3 of those already exist in varying degrees. We haven't cracked that code on instant healing or whatever it's going to allow these people to not be able to die. So I think we're pretty close, and I don't know how much further. I mean, like we've got NASA doing this Artemis mission. I mean, with the first one is to go around the moon, an manned mission, and this, I guess, the subsequent missions will be actually going and setting up a station on the moon. So I think before mankind actually goes off planet permanently, I think we would see the at least the rapture, because all of the judgments that are dealt with in Revelation are dealing with the people that are earth dwellers, those that dwell upon the earth, if we want to take a literal interpretation of that. So it doesn't seem like we've gone off the Earth yet and established colonies off planet.
Okay.
Yeah, another thing we're seeing with AI is a lot of talk in the AI community around universal basic income. Well, if we're going to have all these people that are unemployed, they need a way to survive. We can provide this universal basic income. Well, how do you think they would supply that if that happens? With some form of cryptocurrency, a stable coin, a central bank digital currency that's surveilled, that's programmable, that's controlled. Again, a system that's indistinguishable in functioning capability from the mark of the beast system that we read in Revelation 13. So we're just seeing all of these different parallels that I think speak to the times in which we live.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about crypto, because that's some of the questions we have. You know, Bitcoin's had kind of a rough year, I think.
Yeah.
Understatement.
But then I don't watch the news much, but Fox Business was on, and the guy was talking about Bitcoin. And his advice was buy as much Bitcoin as you can every month. It's sort of like, and then you're sitting there watching it crash in front of you. And I know, Britt, you talk a lot about this. Where are we at in this transition phase? And how quickly do you think a transition will happen? How will it happen? What will it look like? And, what do you think?
As far as central bank digital currency goes, I know in Europe, the European Central Bank has said by 2029, they plan to have a digital euro fully rolled out. So whether they meet that goal or not, the technology is there. It can be done. It's just a matter of implementation and how quickly it can be done. With something like Bitcoin, it's really interesting watching what's happening with that. And I would point out to some of these people that are going after this. You think of terms of the main purpose that people say, oh, Bitcoin serves this. It's limited in number, and therefore it's a hedge against all this fiat currency printing that's taking place. But look at something like gold or silver. There's energy that's expended to dig it out of the earth. And then you have this thing that's limited in number and can't be simply printed. With Bitcoin, not only is the energy expended to mine the Bitcoin, but it's expended to keep the Bitcoin in existence. So for instance, if they stop mining for gold and silver that exists doesn't just disappear. But if they stop mining for Bitcoin, the existing Bitcoin network disappears and Bitcoin is utterly worthless. It disappears. And we're getting to a point where that's happening, where a lot of miners, it's stated below $70,000. And the last I saw, Bitcoin was about $67,000. It becomes unprofitable for these miners to continue to mine Bitcoin. So it requires an ever greater price.
By the way, when you say mine Bitcoin, what do you mean?
It means
the hash compute that they do.
Right.
It's very, very expensive, fast machines that take a lot of energy.
Yeah, but by the way, wasn't there studies that were coming out when Bitcoin started and then cryptos came in that we were going to run out of we're going to exceed generating capacity pretty quickly? And why didn't that happen?
I'm not familiar with those studies.
The machines, the chips that are on there, they're called ASICs. ASIC, can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically a special chip, special single focus chip. This one does very fast compute on numbers. And what it does is the dies keep shrinking, John. So the chip used to be this big, and now it's the size of your pinky fingernail, if that even. So that makes it more energy efficient. That's why.
Okay, but I remember seeing the sky is falling articles when it was first coming out that at this rate it's going to use up all the power resources on the planet and it'll crash everything. And that didn't happen.
No.
And so my question would be, if that didn't happen on Bitcoin, is it possible that that's also not going to happen on AI? That they'll develop efficiencies.
There's already been lots of efficiencies, especially in chip manufacture. It'll probably roll out not as quickly as the first round of outfitting of the data centers that are in place right now, because those have to go through their life cycle to be replaced with more energy efficient chips. How low can it go? I don't know, but there's definitely already breakthroughs in design that's lowering the energy requirement to run these chips.
Yeah, and Google is a prime case. Their TPU stands for Tensor Processing Unit. That's different than an NPU, Neural Processing Unit. It's much more efficient, like you said, Patrick. So Google is in a very strong position going forward. They were lagging, the whole AI thing, but right now I think they're sitting very, very well. This is not financial advice. Please don't do that. But it's coming to them. Their long game in terms of investing in compute and all their tentacles everywhere on the internet, all their user data, everything, all their stuff that they trained with. They're the ones that curated all of the world books everywhere. They're the ones that did it. They did all the mapping of the world. So it's they have a lot of data, and they have data that very few other mega companies like Microsoft and OpenAI and others like that actually have. So they're very strong.
Okay, here's another question. Did Trump pass something this past week that supports the Bitcoin cryptocurrency for our economy that's officially gone into effect?
No, that was a fraudulent post.
Britt, wasn't there rumors that they wanted to make instead of using a Federal Reserve for gold, they would use a reserve, a national protected Bitcoin, asset class, and that the government itself would own. Do you remember that? Is that what this is referring to?
Yeah, what went around was that Trump had put something in place that was going to turn everything digital overnight, and that was a complete.
It was just a false whatever.
It was clickbait.
Lie, but that was based on nothing. And it came out of the blue. Everybody grabbed onto it because there's a new law that just passed. Trump signed it, and we're going to be in hot water by Tuesday or something. And it flew around the internet. I think it was very quickly debunked. I debunked it myself after somebody gave it to me, and
I did too. But then somebody got mad at me for debunking it.
Probably.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So this is a classic question, I guess I would call it. 2020 Microsoft patents 06060606 regarding mining cryptocurrency through bodily activity. Do you think this is, well, I'll rephrase the question. Do you think this is coming about, or was that just Microsoft trolling us? Somebody at Microsoft just trolling those of us who...
Oh, it's a real patent. You can look it up.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't heard any updates on that. I don't know. It's commercial. It's one thing to make a patent, and it's another to commercialize it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. There's a lot of talk, independent of that, among data scientists and even like genetic scientists, et cetera. There's people that are messing with the body. They talk about the concept of injecting non-biologics material into your body for
Graphene.
certain purposes. And this is not the place to get into this for sure, but I did a symposium last year with some scholars from Australia, Japan, and England. We discussed this whole topic. It's an interesting, fascinating topic for sure. But there is talk about harnessing the energy of the body and using that energy to transmit data out of the body, like a wireless network, if you will, and it's crazy stuff. But it's been talked about in military circles, like a DARPA and some projects there. Well, who knows? It's not on the market now for sure, but they talk about it. So it is real. It's really a real deal, but it's just not here.
Okay. So here's a question, because this comes up a lot in these discussions. Does CERN have anything to do with this stuff we're talking about?
That's a Britt question.
No, I don't really know a whole lot about it.
I think I would just say that, I mean, obviously, we're looking at the way that technology is moving forward. It's like all these different tracks, right? And they're all making inroads in various speeds, and some are leapfrogging ahead and they kind of plateau, and then the other technologies kind of catch up. So I do think CERN does play a role in subatomic science or whatever that, whatever we want to apply that to. It will play a role in all this. What exactly that role is just yet, I'm not entirely sure.
I wrote a 4-part series on CERN on my Substack that tries to explore some of those things and the conspiracies thereof, like it being erected over an old temple, Roman temple, dedicated to Apollyon. And so maybe you guys could look at that if you want to. It's on my Substack.
I listened to a very advanced nuclear physicist talk about CERN. Kind of blew my mind because I couldn't hardly understand what they were saying, a lot of it. But one point that they brought out, the old version of CERN, this circular nuclear accelerator to make things crash into each other to discern subatomic particles. That basically the old system didn't produce anything that they ever thought that would produce in the first place. And it was interesting to hear them talk about it, because this person was clearly a physicist at the vast level. And then when they all concluded, well, what we need is a bigger accelerator. So they're building the whole thing over again and it's going to be bigger and bigger and better. But will it produce anything? This is what he asked, So, there's lots of hype and lots of money being expended that may not produce anything useful for humanity. Just saying.
Right. And again, it's one of those ones where it's kind of the theories about it kind of exceed, I think, the physical reality of what, because it's going to completely warp and destroy. It's going to create a black hole and we're all going to die. Or, you've heard all these things.
Oh, yeah.
And they never seem to come true. But nobody ever comes and apologizes for having spread them around. That's always kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So Britt, I want to go back to you a little bit on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, central bank digital currencies. Dollar is a reserve currency, and where do you think that's going to be going in the near term? And please explain that, and take 2 minutes and explain that.
Sure. Well, I mean, the dollar. The dollar is so the United States' power and influence is waning. So the post-World War II global military and financial order is coming to an end. So the how I like to present it is back in the 19th century, we had the world essentially ruled over by the British Empire. People would say the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, today the sun never sets on US military bases. Britain had the Royal Navy, and no one else had anything like it. And they opened up the world's waterways, made them freely navigable for international trade. And they traded all over the world. They helped facilitate that free trade. And as a result, the British pound was the dominant international currency. It was useful all over the world. London became the world's international center of finance. And so the British pound was the world's reserve currency. Well, post World War I, we saw this interregnum period between World War I and World War II, where the British Empire essentially fell apart. They could no longer fulfill that role. The baton was passed to the United States. And the US Navy then ensured the freedom of navigation of the world's waterways. And as a result, the dollar became the world's dominant international trade currency, took on this role of world's reserve currency, and the center of international finance moved from London to New York. And we could see this in things like the Suez Canal crisis, where the British Navy, Royal Navy, was no longer able to secure free trade through that waterway. We're seeing the same thing now with the United States, with the Red Sea crisis. I think that's probably one of the biggest stories of the last 2 years that's not being covered properly in the media. We had a band of rebels from a third world country shut down one of the most vital waterways in the world, the Red Sea. That happened in late 2023. In December 2023, we had the Biden administration say, we're going to launch Operation Prosperity Guardian, the US Navy and 17 different allies. We're going to come in here. We're going to open the waterway back up. And at the time, I said this will be a failure. And a lot of people said, well, Biden's weak. And no doubt Biden was weak. But I said it doesn't matter. We've entered a new era of drone warfare. And the conventional capabilities of the US Navy are obsolete in the face of that drone warfare. And that's exactly what we've seen. President Trump came into office and he said, we're going to get rid of these Houthis. We're going to bomb them into oblivion. He undertook what he promised, and it did not work. And so here we are today. Red Sea traffic is down 80% from where it was 3 years ago. So there's been a failure by the US Navy to fulfill that role of making the waterways free and open for international trade. In the meantime, we're seeing the dollar losing its purchasing power. We've seen nations for over a decade now move away from US treasuries in favor of gold. And so we're seeing a weakening of the post-World War II global military and financial order dominated by the United States. Now, the question is, who does that baton get passed to? Some people think China or BRICS. I don't think that's the case. I believe ultimately, based on what the Bible tells us, it's going to be this global empire that's established and ruled over by the Antichrist. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, a lot of predictions of the death of the dollar. I don't believe that's going to happen overnight. The dollar no longer being the world's reserve currency doesn't mean that the dollar goes away. It just means it assumes a different role. But I would expect U.S. power to wane significantly and decrease significantly, especially if we hit the rapture and some of these other events that we've talked about. But that's what we would expect to see in the last days. We don't read in the Bible that the United States plays this prominent role in world affairs. So the role the United States has had post-World War II can no longer be in that end times world. And that's exactly where we're headed.
Okay, so let me, I sort of take, I have a basket view of different things that happen in the end times. So you would not believe the pile of stuff. Well, maybe you would. because hopefully you get it too. Or maybe I should give out your email addresses so you can share in it. All these different theories about everything in the end times. And so one of them is Babylon. What is Babylon of Revelation 17, 18? And we know I have a pile of people that is convinced it's the United States. I have a pile of people convinced it's Jerusalem. Others convinced it's Babylon rebuilt in Iraq. So let's just look at Babylon rebuilt in Iraq in light of what you just said, Britt, about the Reds. And by the way, I'm not saying that it's not going to be. I'm just saying is that if it's the great trade route, everybody's talking about IMEC and Red Sea corridors and Port and all of these things. And I guess my question is, and I don't know your positions on Babylon, whether it's in Iraq or not, but there's a significant portion of our community that thinks that. But isn't the same concerns about drone warfare shutting down the Red Sea equally of a concern of drone warfare or something else shutting down trade through Iraq, through the Persian Gulf, Iraq, the Port and railways and all of that? Is what makes that different from the Red Sea and the Suez Canal?
In terms of why hasn't it been shut down yet?
No, I mean, I'm just saying everybody says, oh, Babylon's going to come and Babylon's going to take over all the world trade through this little tiny trade route. And I'm just saying is we just talked about the Red Sea being shut down by a relatively unsophisticated country, one of the worst starvation rates in the world. Why won't that happen to the Babylon trade route?
Well, we read in Revelation 13:4, who can make war against the beast. So there won't be, it'll be a different world militarily. So I don't think there will be the ability to wage war against the beast at that point.
Personally, I think there's going to be technology coming out that will solve the drone problem convincingly. Targeting systems, laser systems, other types of targeting, high-speed targeting stuff. It's just picture Iron Dome, not using rockets, but using lasers or some type of a magnetic beam. This is on the drawing boards, I think, right now, and they'll figure out a way to protect from drone attacks. I think in the end, however scary it seems right now, I think this is a problem that can be solved technologically.
Yeah.
So you would be buying Palantir stock, Patrick?
No.
I mean, this is the thing is we're scared of Palantir, right? And I don't like a lot of what they do either. But when I see the guy and he says, I like America and I want to be able to go out and destroy the other guy's army, if he's working for me, I'm kind of happy with that. You know what I mean? It's a paradox. I don't like it, but I also know that it's there. But I'm just not sure we've got a good explanation on how this exception comes about. That everything we're concerned about on trade routes, Panama Canal, Red Sea, all these things, and then it's just going to magically disappear when we get to a trade route through the Euphrates and Al Port.
Let me just say that I think that it's one of two things. The U.S. is so powerful right now still that if we're talking about the tribulation coming in the next 10 years at some point, I mean, either the U.S. is Babylon, mystery form Babylon, or she doesn't exist, because the U.S. is so powerful right now that there's no way that she's not going to take some lead role in the way the world is set up today. And what I mean by that is, I mean, what Britt talked about earlier is true. And I call the last 70 years of the post World War II era, I call that Pax Americana. That was kind of where we dominated through influence. And now we're trying to dominate through essentiality. Trump, what they're trying to do is they're trying to control the entire stack. They want the hardware, the software, the AI, and the energy platforms, and they want to sell that to the world as a stack that everybody else has to use. And I mean, that's because the dollar is waning, and because the dollar is, we're at 38 trillion in debt right now. There's no way that that's sustainable going forward. So they're looking at the same thing the Saudis are looking at. They realize that petroleum is not going to be their main staple forever. They've got to diversify their income if they want to maintain their same level of wealth. So I personally don't see the Al-Fa port leading to Iraq or leading to a new rebuilt Babylon, because you'd have to cut all the way through Iraq up into.
Yes, 350 miles from the Al-Fa port to where the site of ancient Babylon was.
But even still, you would have to have a way out, right? Is it just one way in, and then what? Ships have to turn around. They have to. I mean, these are.
No, they have. Talking about high-speed rails through.
Yeah.
The peaceful areas of Iraq and Syria and Turkey.
So I don't know. I kind of like Lee Brainerd's take on it, because he says that we do take it literal, historical, grammatical, hermeneutic. But if you go to D.L. Cooper's golden rule of interpretation, you take it literally unless taking it literally makes it nonsensical. So we got to ask the question: does a rebuilt Babylon in modern day Iraq, is that nonsensical? And I would say in present day reality, it is. Now that could change very quickly after the rapture. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't know.
I want to make a note of it. February 11th, Pete was early for Roundtable. And kind of agrees with John Haller. So
Oh my goodness, that's a first.
This is a sign of the end times.
Or the beginning of time.
We're resetting all the clocks tonight.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because there was an incident today. In fact, I get up this morning and I check my. I did the most important thing. I checked my Facebook Messenger. Somebody says, I was going to go to El Paso to see my son, but the airport shut down. I'm like, were they not having a storm, are they? And so there was a drone incursion from Mexico. And the initial reports was El Paso airspace in that area is going to be shut down for 10 days. Because of these cartel drones that were coming in. Now they got it fixed. Now, of course, everybody says, oh, this was made up by the Trump administration to distract us from something else, which is par for the course. So
I thought it was UFOs. That's why they shut it down, but I could be wrong.
Oh, I didn't get that conspiracy theory. I'm one conspiracy theory behind you, Pete. So no, it was some kind of distraction or something, and there's no way they could disable the drones and everything. I don't know. It's a very strange world. Let's just shift gears over to Middle East. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, Bibi was at the White House today talking to Trump.
I think they'll strike. I think they got the Abraham USS Abraham Lincoln battle group moving in position.
A second carrier coming in.
I don't think they could, even like a month ago, they couldn't strike without the fear of. I don't think that the real fear was them striking Israel, even though they threatened to do that, because they've already done that before, and it came to nothing. So I think the real fear was them hitting the eastern side of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, where all the refineries are, and that would have crippled the oil, market throughout the world. I mean, we'd be looking at $10 a gallon easy if they were able even to launch a dozen of those rockets into the major petroleum facilities they have there south of Riyadh. So I think that was
So-
the major concern.
So do you think that's why the Saudis shifted?
Yeah,
Because
well,
the
once
Saudis
they-
were kind of like, "Hey, don't use our airspace. No, we want this to happen." Then something happened that the Saudis kind of said, "Well, we're kind of on board with this."
I think they were looking to get all their assets in place before they do a strike, in the fear that the IRGC would launch a counter strike against the oil fields there. So now that they have those assets are almost in place, I do think that there's been 30,000 deaths over there. The Real is completely tanked. They're out of water. They're out of food. I mean, they've cut all the internet lines into the country, in and out of the country. So something will have to give. I don't think it's going to keep going on.
It's hard to say what the day after the Ayatollah looks like. I think it could be a very big mess, and I'm concerned that Turkey's sitting there kind of salivating over what they're going to do to pick up the pieces. But
yeah,
it's worth saying that we should be praying for Iran right now, and a lot of new believers there. Its faith are being tested quite a bit, but I think that it's going to be, I think, very what I kind of imagine is Iran can't be that weakened, otherwise it wouldn't be able to form in the alliance of the Ezekiel 38 war. So if it's destroyed, how can you account for them joining the coalition?
I don't think
there's got to be something that survives the.
Now, there was one report coming out that Trump and Syria and Turkey had kind of worked out a deal that Turkey would come in to kind of take it over and manage it. Which is kind of an interest, if you believe Daniel Light's kind of future, that's kind of an interesting potential bringing that into play. It's a very interesting time. I think, in the next 2 weeks, a lot of our timelines and charts could change, I think.
Even that is accelerating.
And
we would have said, next 2 years. Now we're down to weeks or days now. It's crazy.
Here's an interesting question. If Trump was responsible, and he was, for creating this peace board at the World Economic Forum meeting, and he never said in the charter that they would be concerned specifically with one country or not. However, they've already formed a committee to take over Gaza, the peace board. And this was viewed as kind of an alternative to the United Nations at this point, because the United Nations was supposed to do that, keep the peace around the world for decades and decades and decades. Well, they're not doing it. They've never done it. So Trump took the mantle upon himself, and all of a sudden we have the peace board. Do you think there's any possibility that they're eyeing Iran after an invasion type of a situation where maybe the peace board will be asserting themselves over the affairs of Iran, possibly, in the same way that they're doing it in Gaza?
So today, or this week, a couple things have happened at the UN. Gettr came out and said, we're out of money. We're going under.
Mm-hmm.
Today, he came out and praised the 47th anniversary of the revolution in 1979 to create the Islamic Republic of Iran, when these guys have just killed, by all accounts, maybe 100,000 people in the last month. And so part of me says maybe the UN needs to go away, but then I also have an eschatology, and I'm thinking it's a paradox. We want peace, but peace might not lead to something all that great.
I think the Board of Peace will be like, it will replace the UN in the sense that you have actual movers and shakers with the means to enact change rather than just sit around and debate about it like they do at the United Nations. I think that's the downfall of the United Nations, is it's been this debate club for the last, since 44, 45. And all the things that it could have done, it hasn't, and it's not able to because of how bureaucratic it's become. So now this Board of Peace is going to kind of serve as the alternative. Hey, if there's something that actually happens, we have the actual people that can make it happen. We can make change happen. We're not going to sit around and talk about it all day. So I think that Board of Peace will probably transmogrify into some, I don't know if that's a real word or not, but that'll change and morph into some new global entity or some global body that will actually serve as like the world's policeman.
A technocratic body.
Yeah.
And the same could be said of talking about eclipse. I think the World Economic Forum is eclipsing right now. So I don't think it has the power and thought leadership anymore. I think it's been moved over to the technocrats. Patrick, what do you think?
I do very strongly think that. However, you have to remember that Larry Fink just became a co-leader of the World Economic Forum. He's the head of BlackRock, the biggest corrupt fund in the world. I don't know how much money they manage, but it's just inconceivable. And he's a member of the Trilateral Commission, more importantly. So maybe he was set in to be the custodian as the World Economic Forum kind of gets shut down, if you will. Perhaps that's his role. But at this point, obviously, the World Economic Forum, Trump basically came in and said, "You guys are toast." Basically, that's my paraphrase. He said, "You guys are has-beens, and you're out of here," sort of thing. Well, this was the end of the old world order, in my opinion, the end of the old world order. And we look forward now to whatever this new world order will look like. In other words, out with the old and in with the new. This, by the way, was exactly what Zbigniew Brzezinski predicted when he wrote his book, Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. It wasn't about 2 ages, it was about 3. You have to do the math. There was the old world as behind from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Then there was a current age that we've been in for all these years. Now that this current age is being done away with, and now we're entering the technotronic era. That was his prediction. I think it was very astute. I didn't agree with any. I thought he was an evil man, but he was very astute on his analysis going forward. Exactly. We see all the steps along the way, how they've done it. So if that theory holds true, we can't judge future actions based on the old world order at this point. That won't get you anywhere at this point. So looking to the future is really risky, and it's really difficult to try and make sense of stuff. They have an idea in their mind what they want to do. Obviously, they're doing it,
But
they haven't that shared it us.
But Patrick, where are the technocrats going to come from, if not from the World Economic Forum, the World Government Summit, and all these other think tanks? Because I'm looking over at Trump. It's hard to remember if we talked about this or not. I know you and Courtney and I talked about it when we were talking about your book. This Pax Silica thing that they've put in. We had Pax, Pete mentioned Pax Americana. Now they have Pax Silica, and they've got this uber, like, out of Hollywood created, Hollywood AI generated technocrat guy. What's that guy's name?
Peter Thiel.
No, well, he came out of Silicon Valley. He heads up the Pax Silica project at the State Department.
Yeah, the State Department. Yeah.
And, he looks like he's out of central casting for, the end time technocrat. And so I'm just saying is, I mean, are they just shifting the chairs around a little bit, or is it completely new, or it's just new that
Well, we've
somebody else is
in
in
our,
charge?
in our lifetime, we have resistance. I talk about the political establishment, not the people of the country, obviously. Whatever they do is not connected to us, it seems like. But the political establishment has not been concerned with building empire in the last 50 years. This is a new concept. You didn't see this happening with Reagan, with Bush, with Clinton, George W., and same thing with Obama. That's never been our goal to build empire. However, with President Trump now, it's very clearly on the drawing board with Pax Silica, because this is their way to wrap in other nations, our allies, if you will, into our net of AI and the whole stack that Pete was talking about, the data centers, the operating system, the energy generation, the applications that run on it, the basically AI applications, then the agent software that runs on top of that, the whole stack. That's the whole thing. They're offering this to any ally who would join us with this declaration. It's not a treaty at all, but it's a Pax Silica declaration that promises them to get all this we have to give them, and they have to abide by our rules to use it, and not to give it to somebody who is seen as our enemy. And so this is a way to draw these countries closer to us in a unified empire, if you will. And it's based on AI at this point. We used to think it was based on money, like the dollar. The petrodollar was recycled through the Islamic Mideast countries back to the United States. Well, that scheme is pretty much over at this point. So now America is apparently going to build empire. Greenland's part of that, maybe Canada part of it. Mexico, there's talk about taking over Mexico, Venezuela as well, and maybe Central America, who knows? But building empire seems to be on the plate now. We haven't seen this in over 50 years, God, probably 100 years at this point. So where does this, we have to figure, well, whatever's new coming on the scene, this is what we ought to be dealing with at this point, and I think it's very fuzzy at this point, but personally, I don't like it, but that's immaterial. I don't like a lot of things, and it's my problem, not yours, but, but, what seems to be on the drawing board at this point is all this talk about empire building, and this may be the shape of the new world order, the new world order, if you will.
I was just thinking, Patrick, that something, as I look back on Musk, I think where technocracy really got real in the real world was when that moment that Elon said, "Why do all cars have to be made in Detroit?" And I'll never forget what he said. I'll paraphrase. He said, "We can build a better car in Silicon Valley, period." And he did. And by breaking through this previous frozen mindset structure, the technocrats realized, oh my goodness, it worked. And now all holds were removed and all the technocrats leaked out, like you've always said, and began to really get aggressive, with their technical implementations. But I think Elon was the spark when he came out with the Tesla electric roadster what was that, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
fired up all now. We got to move now. I could just see the boardroom conversations that were occurring back in those days. But I think that the old systems, the WHO, the WEF, NATO, all of those are just so, they're dinosaurs today, just literally. And they inhibit the velocity that the technocrats can achieve. Look at Anduril, Lucky Palmer, Lucky Palmer, right? Or Palmer or Lucky.
Palmer Lucky.
That guy, all of a sudden, is one of the biggest advanced weapons manufacturers in the world. In what, 5 years? How does this happen? He's way ahead of other industrial complex stuff because they were moving too slow. If you got a $30,000 hammer and a $10,000 toilet seat, that's just not sustainable. So I think the technocrats are literally seizing control of everything that's playing right into the infrastructure that the beast system is going to rely on every level. Bypass the traditional copper wire or tower of broadcasting a telephone and television station message over the air or in cable, and just go to space. I mean, they're just cutting all this fat out of the system right now, and it's getting so much leaner, which is why they can move so much faster. And when you see Elon merging XAI with SpaceX, guys, we were just talking about AI data centers and infrastructure in space. Hello. There it is. You could just $1.5 trillion IPO, if I recall correctly. Britt, do you remember the exact number?
I don't. No.
Yeah,
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So it'll be the largest IPO by far of any company in history.
Didn't he just have a car, one of his self-driving cars, self-drive from coast to coast without a human putting any kind of driving inputs into it? I think he did.
Yeah, somebody did it. I don't know who.
They're coming out with trucks now.
I saw a Tesla truck. Yeah. By the way, parked in the middle of the road on a illegally parked, unloading stuff. That was funny.
But,
to your standards, it was illegal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The thing about the United Nations and the WEF and all this stuff, if we look at Daniel chapter 2 and the statue, we look at the feet, it's mixed, the clay, the miry clay with the iron mixed together. And any way you look at that, that's unstable. And to me, it signals that it's an unstable system, that you have some that are very, very strong, and then you have a lot that are not strong at all. But regardless, when you put them together, miry clay being the wet moldable clay, you could mix the metal in there with it, but once it dries, it becomes brittle, and they don't adhere together. So whatever this final iteration of the world that is coming, it's going to be highly unstable and volatile, is the way I would read it. And then, even with things like the Epstein list that just came out, you had Larry Fink in there mentioned very prominently, not prominently, but like in a not a good light. So, I mean, when you get guys like that, that's going to shake the markets up. We don't know what the impacts or the fallout of all that's going to be just yet. I mean, I know that Bitcoin, that didn't help Bitcoin at all when that came out. So
let me give you another read on what's happening with Epstein. We haven't really talked about Epstein too much. I don't want to talk about him at all, but to say this, there's a thought overall. Why was this whole Epstein thing broken right now? In particular, there's a thought it has the power, like a hand grenade or a bomb going off in our country, to strip the last sense of trust from the American people towards the government. The government now is viewed uniformly as corrupt from the top to the bottom. And this would play into the technocrat hands perfectly if they could get rid of the political establishment once and for all. This has been a dream that goes back 100 years for them, to get rid of the political system. They may be close to doing it right now, because everybody's saying, look who I just found.
Who's getting rid of the political system?
Pardon?
Who's getting rid of the
The
political
technocrats.
system?
The technocrats have always had it in for the political system altogether. They wanted to get rid of the political system in 1932. They wrote to FDR for him to declare himself dictator and simply dismiss Congress. The rationale was, we have the science on our side. You don't need political discourse to discuss it. You're just going to do it.
It's good we don't have anybody in power who might be inclined to do that now.
Well, I know, I get it, but this has been a
No, I'm being
latent,
facetious, of course.
yeah, this has been a latent dream of theirs for a long time. It may be at this point that they can use this whole episode to completely destabilize our government system, basically neuter them, if you will, and that would default the vacuum that would be created, put it that way. The vacuum that could be created, the leadership vacuum, could be filled by this technocrat class in Washington, D.C. That's all I'm saying. They're all billionaires, by the way. Conveniently, they're all billionaires. They don't need tax money even to do what they're doing. They're rich beyond your wildest imagination. I tallied up a dozen or so of these people's wealth, well over $1 trillion at this point combined, and there's more billionaires than you ever saw in your life. They're all in Washington, D.C. They're all marching to this technocratic takeover, like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, etc.
Jacob Hellberg, that's the guy from Tech Silicon.
Yeah.
Dark MAGA.
Dark MAGA, dark enlightenment. Exactly.
Dark enlightenment.
Well, I mean, well, certainly the Epstein files appear to give you something to go after everybody.
Yeah, I still hold to my view that Trump, though, I don't know why he was reluctant to release other than he knew it was going to be this giant political hand grenade. But I don't think he knows that he's not implicated in there anywhere in the negative light, because Epstein didn't like him. We know that Trump banned him from his club and tried to get him arrested back in like 2011 or 2012, or maybe earlier than that. So Epstein was working with other folks to try and take Trump down. So I don't think that Trump himself was worried about it, but I do think he was worried about the fallout, because there's so many people going to be named in this thing. It's going to be very chaotic. But it does, to Patrick's point, it does, if Trump is heralding in the age of the technocracy, then, it may bolster Trump's legitimacy in terms of the claims he's making and his aims for 2026 and beyond, for controlling. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
You said who were you talking about, Pete?
For 2026 and beyond, the midterms and beyond.
Yeah, who's going to control?
Oh, I think this lends credence to Trump's need to. He knows that if he hands the system back to the Democrats in another election that they rig or whatever, the country's done, like DOA. So I don't think he's going to allow that to happen. But something like this coming out with the Epstein files and the number of Democrats that are going to be implicated in all this, Hakeem Jeffries, all these guys were on the take from Epstein. So it's going to be very, very bad for a lot of people. And we see across the UK, Norway, and I'm sure other nations.
Here's what we do. This will be the first trial by AI. Get it over with. That's not going to happen. My prediction is I'll be surprised if anybody goes to jail.
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, there was so in the hearing with Pam Bondi this morning or today, she was being excoriated by Thomas Massey because, in these millions of pages of documents, one document was released that had a list of victims, names, and what Massey said tells you everything you need to know about that. I think people were calling the victims, and they don't want to be involved. And I'm just telling you, without a victim on that, you don't have any crime to prosecute.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. And look, Ghislaine Maxwell was there the other day. She pled the fifth, which is her right. Bill and Hillary Clinton are coming in to testify. They're going to plead the Fifth Amendment all day long. Les Wexner's coming in. I know his attorneys. I'm pretty sure he's going to be pleading the fifth. He's got the speech already prepared. And that's his right to do that. But how do you prosecute? That's the problem. How do you prosecute it? That's the thing. And there were 6 million. Well, there's 3 million released. There's 3 million to go. And I'm telling you, I've been in cases where there's that many documents, and it's an unbelievable task to go through them and try to make the connections. You might be able to do it with AI, but it's a Herculean task.
Yeah.
And now they've been sitting around there for 20 years with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not optimistic that anything's it's just going to be political fodder for, running down people and getting them out of power.
Yeah, and if Trump was in there in any negative light, they would have used it. I mean, they've already they brought up 30 different charges against him, lawsuits. They've impeached him a number of times, 2 assassination attempts. I mean, if they had dirt on him, they absolutely would have used it to stop him from running this time for sure. So I don't think they knew there was anything in there that implicates him in a negative light. But I think Trump knew the political fallout from a lot of the movers and shakers in the world was going to be pretty significant. So I don't know.
Just imagine if he can maintain the high moral ground on this whole thing. Not that he hasn't. That's not my point. But if he can maintain the moral high ground and all the corruption that's exposed with these files, top to bottom, he'll appear as perhaps the guy who says, all you people, you're so corrupt, get out of my house, period. Just away with all of you. I can almost see this coming out of his lips at some point. I would like to say that too. You people, you just made such a mess of everything, and there's no way to get back to normalcy. Just get out of our house altogether. If he can maintain that level of moral superiority, he can possibly pull it off.
Yeah.
Just saying. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, look, it's 9:15, so I think we've kind of covered. Well, we haven't covered a lot tonight. That's the problem. So we'll try to do one of these in about 4 or 5 weeks. I'll just say where I'm going to be, and then I'll give everybody a minute to kind of wrap up where they think, and then we'll wish everybody good night. First of all, we thank you for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do on there. Comment nicely, especially. We really enjoy those. And I'm going to be, so today's the 11th? So 4 weeks, I'll be at Rock Harbor Church in Bakersfield on Wednesday evening. I think I'm going to be at 412 Church in Temecula on March 8th. And let's see. Oh, in Las Vegas, March 20th to 22nd. Peter, you at that conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, at Harvest Life Church with Kurt Reed and Tom Hughes and I don't know who else, Billy Crone, Olivia
Billy Crone.
Melnick, maybe.
Yeah.
Now-
So anyway, so just follow us on social media. We do thank you for listening. I've done a couple interviews this week. I'll post another one tomorrow, Friday. The one I did yesterday was just a phenomenal interview with a lady from Shiloh, Eliana Passatin. It's just one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever done. It's very biblical, and I think you would enjoy listening to it. So be sure to check that one out. And so let's go around the table. We'll start with Britt, and then we'll do Patrick, Pete, and Scott, and just take maybe a minute to wrap up what you think we ought to be looking at.
Sure. I think what we're talking about, what we've been talking about, and all the signs we see, big picture, the time is short. So don't let any of this fill you with fear. We're not to live in fear, but keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Keep your eyes fixed on what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be sharing the gospel. We're supposed to be encouraging each other. So focus on reading your Bible every day, praying, living the most godly life you can, and lifting up the people around you and sharing the hope you have in Jesus Christ with every single person you meet. Because we should be filled with a sense of joy knowing Jesus is coming back. Because that's what all of this tells us. We should also be filled with a sense of urgency for those who are still lost. So make sure that you're taking advantage of every opportunity you have. I really believe the time is short.
Okay. You're on to Pete.
Yeah, just echoing what Britt's talking about. I do think times are going to be pretty chaotic this year, and until the Lord returns, I do expect things to be increasingly unstable in every metric you can measure. But, we are not citizens of this world and this reality. Our citizenship is in heaven, and our Redeemer is coming to save us here very soon. And the Bible doesn't give us all these signs in Scripture for nothing. I think that they all point to his things that we can look at. We can't know the day or the hour, but we can definitely know the season. And we're certainly seeing the signs being fulfilled at speeds now that are, exponential in how it's hard to keep up anymore. And I know many of you out there have fatigue. I know that the draw to stay connected online is strong, especially if you don't have a good church to plug into at home. But, just continue to be salt and light in your communities, unplug every once in a while and touch grass and meet your neighbors and share the gospel with everybody you come into contact with and just be used by the Lord and ask the Lord to be used until he comes and takes us back to be with him. So all that to say is just keep looking up. Don't lose hope. Our redemption draws nigh.
Okay, Patrick.
Well, reality is fleeting these days. I do believe more and more people are dumping into the AI black hole, and they're being confused all over the place with what's going on in the world. Christians should not be drawn into this whole mess. We have to maintain our sense of reality, and reality for us is based on God. That's the only sure reality that we can see in the universe. It's our touchstone. If you lose touch with that, you're going to be sucked into the black hole. So our goal, our mission at this point is to always be connected to the real reality that we face that's defined by God himself. I know that sounds redundant maybe and impossible, but this is our goal. If you do not guard your mind and your heart for all of these things, you're going to have a screwed up mind and a screwed up heart. Put it that way. We have the resources to guard our mind and our heart in Christ Jesus. And the Bible is very clear on this. If we ignore that or just disregard, we'll be sucked in. that's my hope for anybody that listens to our musings here, if you will. We're trying to make sense out of stuff. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Nevertheless, our goal is corporately is to have always our hand on the touchstone of God Himself, and hopefully this will lead us forward from here. It'll make everything make sense to the people that we witness to as well, who are lost in the system at this point. They see the corruption of man. It's all over now. This gives us a great opportunity to speak to people about the one who can take care of all that stuff and who will eventually be the judge of all the corruption in the world. So that's my hope for people.
Okay, Scott?
This is personal, but I had a subscriber on my Substack, and I had just gotten done with one of my dev blogs, which I released on Friday night. And I made the statement in there as I was working on a new program called Bible Bench, because I want to know whether AI can be reliable in terms of retrieving scripture. And I'm finding some very interesting results there, by the way. But I made the statement that I put in I had a 7-day expenditure. I had other things I had to return to in terms of other projects. So 7 days, I worked 14-hour days for 7 days straight. And I got almost all the way done, believe it or not. So I had the subscriber basically reprimand me in a loving, Christ-honoring way to say, Scott, you should not be working on the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath, the day of the Sabbath isn't a hill to die on for us right now. It is the principle of where are you sheltering? Where are you taking rest? And in the Watchman community, we are particularly vulnerable to device dependency and to looking at news all the time, and to, there's a fury of things that we are trying our best to stay in touch with, but it wears us out in a way that most normal people at church don't experience, right? I guess the encouragement I have is it's okay to pause and to come off the wall for a day a week and to let others, take the wall and to do their work before the Lord. And I'm trying to learn how to do this better because I'm, see the times are urgent, and I'm working as hard as I can on a number of advanced gospel initiatives right now. And it's just, I justify it in my head, yet I don't want to miss the real important message. And I am reading, by the way, in the Old Testament again. Just finished Exodus, and I'm reminded of all the commandments and all that stuff. And I commend this sister for having the bravery to speak up like that and be really direct with me. I do appreciate that. So, but that's something I'm going to pass on. Her thought-provoking thought is something that I'm deeply thinking about right now. And I encourage all of us to make sure that we're not so overwhelmed with news and with the frenzy and activity of life that we start losing emotional resiliency, so that we can succumb to flaming darts and all that other stuff. So just be careful with how we invest our time, and do your best. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. I'll just say I was talking to my wife before I came down that maybe we need a new beatitude that blessed are the aged, for they shall soon see God.
I thought the blessed of the ages was we had to take naps at 2 p.m. I thought that was the blessing.
Well, I talk a lot about this stuff. I'm not really that stressed out, to be honest with you, but
we know, John.
It's crazy though what's going on. I mean, it's just it could really get to you. It really could get to you.
Yeah.
So anyway, everybody, thank you so much for listening, guys. We may try to do this. I'll be in California March 11th, but maybe March 18th. If you guys check your calendar, get back to me if that's okay. We'll do this again. I think people kind of like a regular rotation here. So everybody, thank you. Good night. God bless, and we'll see you next time.
God bless.
Bye now.